Om. 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 Om Sahana Vavatu Sahano Bhunaktu Sahaviryam Karavavahai Tejasvinavadhitamastu ma vidvishavahai. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Sadashivasamarambham Shankaracharya Madhyamam Asmadacharya Paryantam Vande Guru Paramparam. Ramo Rajamanis Sada Vijayate Ramam Ramesham Bhaje Ramena Bihata Nishacharachamu Ramaya Tasmai Namaha Ramannasti Parayanam Parataram Ramasya Dasosmyaham Rame Chittalaya Sada Bhavatu Me Bho Rama Mamuddhara Samasta Janakalyane Niratam Karunamayam Namami Chinmayam Devam Satgurum Brahma Vitvaram Satgurum Brahma Vitvaram Satpratyaya Kimnu Vihaya Santam Hrudyesha Chinta Rahito Hrudakhyah Katham Smaramastamameyamekam Tasya Smritistatra Drudhaiva Nishtha. Saddarshanam is a text which is helping us tune with Bhagwan Raman Maharshiji's mind. What we see in a saint, the calmness, the depth in their personality, it's very difficult to fathom how they reach there. Texts like these are a window into their convictions. Bhagwan in particular spoke very little. Whenever questions were asked also, maximum he would give 2-3 line answer. Very few places you find where he has elaborated on one question. But the main idea in Saddarshanam is, let us first bring attention to Ahankara. From the world, let us come to Ahankara. And from Ahankara, let us go to Sat. Having established ourselves in Sat, then let us look at different things. How to reach there? The journey inwards, different techniques are pointed out. By the way, which were the 2 verses that we did meditation on today? Shabdadi Rupam Bhuvanam Samastam Shabdadi Satyendriya Vritti Bhasya. So one technique Bhagwan says is, look at the world and through that turn inwards. Now imagine the flip. Generally our complaint would be, when I see the world, I become extrovert. Bhagwan says, no, if you see the world, you can shift attention to Sat. How is that? World is recognized only when sense organs are there. Shabdadi Satta Indriya Vritti Bhasya. Indriya Vritti means thought of sense organ. And Indriyas are also recognized when mind is there. Satyendriyana Manaso Vashesyat. Therefore, Manomayam Tad Bhuvanam Vadamaha. He says it's a great sadhana not to look upon the external world as a solid world, but to boil it down to thoughts. Swami Vivekananda writes in one place, when he heard this teaching from his guru, This was the teaching which he stayed with for a long time. And he tells Ramakrishna Paramhamsi, there was a time when I hit my head on a pillar just to see whether it is solid or it is a thought. And he says, more I thought in this way, more is the conviction that this is how it is. That is the beauty of truth. Whether we like it or not, we will benefit. Saddarshanam, every verse is speaking about that truth. More we hold on to it, greater is the benefit. Now from thoughts, Bhagavan says, come to Ahankara first. He doesn't explicitly mention, but when he says Dhyaha, Dhyaha means Ahankara. And he says, just notice how interdependent world and Ahankara are. We have never seen the world independent of Ahankara. Only when Ahankara is there, world is there. Now enquire, where is it rising? Where is it dissolving? That substratum is Sat. So these are some techniques by which Bhagavan is helping us point attention back to Sat. And having established ourselves in Sat, he says, now look at all different problems. If somebody says Purushartha is greater or Prarabdha is greater. So first he says, come to Sat. That question, right? Who is asking this question? Or for whom is Purushartha and Prarabdha? What it actually means is this. Before we discuss anything, let us establish ourselves in Sat. From that standpoint, everything disappears. Because the questioner is gone, question is also gone. Having said all this, Bhagavan said in the 10th shloka, let us chant it, importance of sadhana. Bhavantu saddarshana sadhanani, bhavantu saddarshana parasya nama krutibhis saparyaha sadvastu niprapta tadatma bhava nishtaiva saddarshanamidyavehi bhavantu saddarshana sadhanani parasya nama krutibhis saparyaha sadvastu niprapta tadatma bhava nishtaiva saddarshanamidyavehi. Saddarshana sadhanani bhavantu means those sadhanas which are there for taking our mind inwards, which eventually will help us abide in Sat. All those sadhanas, let them be there. Parasya Ishasya of Bhagavan, Nama Akruti Bihi Saparyaha. Different ways of worshipping the Lord through Nama and Rupa. Akruti means Rupa, Nama means name. Name is for Japa and Rupa is for Dhyanam. Both these things are sadhanas which will eventually lead us to Saddarshanam. Now, what do these sadhanas do? If at all we are doing it, how do we make sure that we are progressing in the right direction? It is said the three primary limitations in a spiritual seeker are impurity of the mind, distraction of the mind, and ignorance. Impurity of the mind, the simplest way it expresses is having bhoga vritti outside. Having this desire to enjoy something outside that is considered as one impurity. Now within that desire, there might be a spectrum. There will be some bhoga which are nishiddha bhoga, forbidden enjoyments. There will be some bhoga which are vihita bhoga. Vihita bhoga means they can be enjoyed in a dharmic way. But for a seeker who is seeking self-abidance, both are impurities. In the beginning stages, they will say, nishiddha bhoga, keep it out. But those which are kamya bhoga, those can be done in a dharmic way. See, desire to eat something is also a desire, but it's not nishiddha bhoga. Some addiction, that will be nishiddha bhoga. What sadhana will do is, that mind which is seeking sukham outside, it will give an assurance that I can be happy even without any bhoga. Take any sadhana, this is one of the things it will give an assurance. If let us say somebody gets joy doing parayanam, now what was his sense object involved? Really speaking, there is no sense object. We can memorize it also. Don't say book is the object. Very minimal support. But the joy of doing parayanam, chanting stotram, gives joy. The very act of doing that parayanam gives joy. So Bhagwan says, Bhagwan Ramana Maharshi, he says our mind is like a cow. Every time you tie it to the home, to one home, to a peg, it wants to eat the grass in the neighbor's pasture. Pulling out that peg, wants to go and eat grass in the neighbor's pasture. One way to keep this cow home is tie it very tightly and keep it there. It might stay, but still it will want to go there. The moment it gets an opportunity, it will pull from this peg and go to neighbor's pasture. But let us say we give green grass to the cow. You give green grass to the cow, whatever it would have found there, that it is finding here also. When that happens, he says this cow will not want to go to neighbor. He says our mind is like this for Vishaya Bhoga. It is seeking something else because it has not discovered joy within. And all sadhanas, if we do it well, the main result of that is it will open a new source of bliss within. This is also the symbolic meaning of the pot which is broken during Janmashtami. You know, they have the dahi handi all the way, and then it is broken, and whatever butter is there, that comes. That is the sadhaka who is going within and tapping into that source of bliss. Parasya nama krutibhi saparyaha means all the sadhanas, the first thing they will do is remove bhoga buddhi from jagat. Mala word we can think about in different ways. Mala means impurity. But what is the meaning of this impurity? You can say if there is kama, krodha, desire, anger, greed, jealousy, that is one impurity. So through this sadhana, the phalashruti should be those impurities have reduced. If I would get angry, a drop of a hat, so after doing sadhana, the duration should increase. Not duration of anger, duration taken to get angry. Not impulsive person, he should have some depth in his personality. That is one insignia of that sadhana being done well. Now the second challenge a sadhaka has is distraction of mind. Mind is unable to settle down in a particular thing for a long time. And for Saddarshanam, what is expected? That we should be able to pay attention to Sat for a little longer time. Kapilji, you can little come on the right. This camera is blocking. Good. I need to have darshanam for everybody in the class. Vikshepa, that is the second obstacle, where mind is unable to keep one object in front. Constantly it jumps from one to the other. Even if it goes somewhere where it loves, there also it cannot settle for a long time. That is the nature of this mind, keeps going from one object to another object. Now for Vikshepa to reduce, Bhagavan says that also needs effort. Vikshepa will not reduce, distraction will not reduce on its own. The technique of reducing this Vikshepa, technique of making mind single-pointed, that is sadhana. So it is said, it doesn't matter how many rounds of japa we have done. What is more important is, for how much time did mind really stay in that japa? That's why the beads, they said, at least have 108. Means out of 108, 8 at least should be the count by which our mind really turns towards the Lord. So that is the second blessing of sadhana. More we think about these, more we can fine-tune our sadhana. It's not an mechanical act. Puja Guruji would say this. Sometimes, children, when they were told to do puja at home, mother would ask later, did you do your today's prayer? Ho, puja karun takli. In Marathi, I did puja and it is done now. He said his Guruji's mother would tell, oh, you should never say this. You should never say, puja kar dala. In Hindi, it would mean that, I finished puja. Means that particular sadhana is not just a checklist that I have done this for today. The litmus test is, has mind become single-pointed? Has it turned towards the Lord? And is it inspired to overcome the impurities? For Vikshepa, the distraction of mind, Ramana Maharshi gives example of elephant's tusk or the trunk of an elephant. You know how this elephant's trunk is, right? If it is moving, it will not move straight. The trunk will move left and right. And whatever is there on the road, it will go and hit. And in villages and all, narrow road will be there. This elephant has to go. Whoever is on the side, it will throw them away. So Mahut, what he does is, he gives an iron chain to that elephant. So in that trunk, that elephant has to hold an iron chain or whatever little heavy thing. And what it does is, the trunk doesn't move left and right. This is all the sadhanas which are there. They are like that iron chain for the trunk. Mind which naturally moves left and right, that should remain single-pointed. When this is done, mala is removed, vikshepa is removed. Then comes the third step of removing avarana. Avarana means ignorance. Only the statement is sufficient for that sadhaka to gain the knowledge that you are not this Ahankara, you are Sat. Tat Sat Tvam Asi. For the one whose Mala and Vikshepa is removed, Jnanam and Jnana Nishtha, knowledge and abidance in knowledge, both happen together. For the one whose Mala and Vikshepa is still there, impurity of the mind and distraction of the mind, it is still there. First of all, knowledge will happen with lot of difficulty. Even if it takes place, he will need some time to get abidance. And that abidance part will again involve working on impurity, working on distraction. At the same time, strengthening this knowledge. Having done this, Bhagavan says, Sadvastuni prapta tadatma bhava. Atma bhava means oneness. Now, oneness can come with the form also. That's why he's using the word Atma bhava. He said, this is not oneness with some form outside, but this is oneness with that Sat, which is one's own essential nature. We don't even have to say, I have become one with Sat. Just like fire doesn't have to say, I have become one with heat. That is its essential nature. So Sat is essential nature of the sadhaka. His Atma bhava, his feeling of I is in this Sat. That nishtha alone, Sadbhava nishtha Saddarshanam iti eva ehi. What we are calling as Saddarshanam is this abidance in Sat. It is said Raman Maharshi Ji, when he is seeing Arunachala Bhagwan, the mountain, there he says, I see you as the illuminator of thought. Through my eyes I am seeing Arunachala Bhagwan, but in my understanding, Bhagwan is the seer. So all names and forms, one way of relating would be through the form outside. But second is the understanding that same Bhagwan who is appearing outside is the one who is drashta inside. It's actually good news. Means there is never a time when we are separate from the Lord. Even if we want, we cannot be separate. The only separation is if mind becomes extrovert. Means Bhagwan is always there, but mind is seeing somewhere else. Now this sadhaka is inspired. He said, I will work on Mala and Vikshepa. But when it comes to this avarana, bhanga, when it comes to removing ignorance, this student who is very contemplative, that student is asking, how should I think? What is the method of inquiry? How should I do vichara? To guide that sadhaka, Bhagwan gives few techniques. Okay, the first technique is inquiring into pairs of opposites. He says everybody's life is filled with pairs of opposites. Instead of getting caught up in them, there is a way to shift attention to Sat through those pairs of opposites. See what he says, 11th verse. Dvandvani sarvanyakhilas triputyah Dvandvani sarvanyakhilas triputyah Dvandvani sarvanyakhilas triputyah Kinchit samashritya vibhanti vastu Kinchit samashritya vibhanti vastu तन्मार्गणे स्यात् गलितं समस्तम् तन्मार्गणे स्यात् गलितं समस्तम् न पश्यतां सच्चलनं कदापि न पश्यतां सच्चलनं कदापि द्वन्द्वानि सर्वाण्यखिलास्त्रिपुट्यः किञ्चित् समाश्रित्य विभान्ति वस्तु तन्मार्गणे स्यात् गलितं समस्तं न पश्यतां सच्चलनं कदापि. Now I hope all of you are comfortable with rearranging the words. The formation here is little back and forth. We just have to rearrange the words to get meaningful sentences. Sarvani dvandvani akhilaha triputyaha. Sarvani dvandvani akhilaha triputyaha. All different pairs of opposites. What are the different pairs of opposites? In Ramcharitmanas, 35 pairs, almost 30 plus pairs are pointed out. Dukkha and Sukha. Sorrow and joy. Punya and Papa. Merit and sin. Sadhu Asadhu. Good person, bad person. Ucha Aru Nichu. Top and down. He says you look at this entire creation, it's made up of pairs of opposites. There is day, there is night. There is heat, there is cold. All different pairs of opposites. And akhilaha triputyaha. Triputyaha means different triads. The simplest triad is knower, known, and knowing. Let us say I am, even if I make the simple sentence, right? I know. What is the question you will ask? What do you know? Okay. You say, I know, let us say this camera. Then the question is, how do you know? Who knows? What do you know? And how do you know? All these three will go together the moment you say the word, I know. So this is called as Triputi. Triputi. The knower is called as Jnata. Knower is called as Jnata. What is he knowing? The object. The object is called as Jnaya. And how is he knowing? Let us say through a thought. That is called as Jnanam. So Jnata, Jnaya, Jnanam. These are called as Triputis. What is another Triputi example? Karta, Karma Kriya. Drishti, Drashta, Drishya, Drishti. Jiva, Jagat, Ishvara. That is also one Triputi. All these triads and these pairs of opposites which are there, Kinchit Vastu Samashritya Vibhanti. Kinchit Vastu Samashritya Vibhanti. These pairs of opposites and triads, they are recognized only with the help of something. Taking support of something alone, these pairs of opposites and triads become known to us. Now, even to appreciate this point needs a lot of introspection. We never think pairs of opposites are known to us because of something. They become so overpowering that we don't have time to think about ashraya of pair of opposite. If object is very attractive, do we think I am the knower, this is the known, this is knowledge? He says no. He says one Maturity in thought is whenever it comes to triad and whenever it comes to pairs of opposites, recognizing there is some entity taking whose support these things are known. What is that entity? First answer should come is Ahankara. Only when Ahankara is there, pairs of opposites are recognized. In deep sleep, Ahankara dissolves, all dvandvas dissolve, all triads dissolve. So taking support of Ahankara alone, pairs of opposites and triads are recognized. Now if Ahankara is the one ashraya, he says look deeper. Is there an ashraya for Ahankara also? Because there is a time when even Ahankara is dissolving. Right? There has to be some substratum, which is a substratum into which this Ahankara is dissolving. Tan margane syat. That substratum one should enquire. Tan margane syat samastam galitam. Or you can rearrange this as Tan margane samastam galitam syat. Tan margane samastam galitam syat. When you inquire into that substratum, now remember, this substratum is not Ahankara. So Bhagwan Raman Maharshi's advice to us is not only to inquire into Ahankara. He says, having come to Ahankara, go to the substratum of Ahankara, which is Sat. And from Sat standpoint, when Ahankara is negated, all duality, all the pairs of opposites and triads, they also disappear. Disappear in what way? We don't give reality to duality. We don't give reality to pairs of opposite and this triad. If you literally take the meaning, we'll always struggle for Saddarshanam. What is the literal meaning? Samastam galitam syat. Galitam means it dissolves. Like when you put a tablet in water, you see how it dissolves? Like that, this pairs of opposites and triads, they will dissolve. That will never happen. In understanding, knowing that I am Sat, and looking upon this Jagat as Mithya. Tan margane samastam galitam syat. Last line is there, right? Na pashyatam satchalanam kadapi. So this we can rearrange as Sat pashyatam. Having seen Sat, or those people who are seeing Sat. Sat pashyatam na kadapi chalanam. There is no drifting away of those people from this abidance. Sat pashyatam na kadapi chalanam. Once mala and vikshepa is removed and abidance is gained in this Sat, he says there is no stepping out of this understanding. If at all you forget, he says just remind yourself. Everything we don't need to keep repeating. Right? The best example is our home address. Now, do we keep consciously repeating, this is where I live, 10160 Clayton Road, 10160 Clayton Road? No. But if I forget where I live, if I forget what is my address, then I can remind myself. In the same way, if Vyavahara takes over and this knowledge is forgotten, as though, then the sadhana there is reminder. If understanding is clear, we know how our identity is Sat. That reminder is called as Nidhidhyasanam. That reminder is called as meditation. Why is it called meditation? Because it is removing erroneous notion. Main purpose of meditation is to remove erroneous notion. Viparita bhavana nivrutti. So either we can do it sitting down in one place, or we can do it while in vyavahara, provided knowledge is clear. If I myself don't know where I stay, if I keep repeating the address, there is no guarantee I'll reach the right home. But if I know where I stay and I have forgotten, then repetition is helpful. So clarity about nature of Sat will happen in Shravanam. Depth, removal of doubts, Mananam. And removal of habitual erroneous notion will happen through Nidhidhyasanam. The reason we are discussing this is we have to see the result of this line in our life. Bhagwan Ramana Maharshi said, Sat Pashyatam na kadapi chalanam. Those who have seen the self, they never step out from this understanding. If anybody is a sincere sadhaka, they will have an objection with this line. Say, Bhagwan, my whole problem is this. When I do satsang, I understand I am Sat. But whenever I step out, chalanam happens. And you said, na kadapi chalanam. There is never a time where you will step out of this understanding. So there we should appreciate. Sat is something which is always our nature. Whether we like it or not, we are Sat. What is stepping out is mind. Mind is turning its attention away from this knowledge, from this truth, and going out in the world. There the sadhana is turn back within again. As far as our identity is concerned, that will never fall from Sat. That's why one of Bhagwan's name is Achyuta. Achyuta means what? There is no Chuti in Bhagwan. One who is ever alert, ever awakened to this higher self. Na pashyatam satchalanam kadapi. But this pair of duality, we have to appreciate at both levels. In the Ramcharitmanas, whenever it is said, Dukha Sukha Papa Punya Dinarati, all these pairs of opposites, Dukha Sukha Papa Punya Dinarati, like this different things, Goswamiji counted. But what was the sadhana there? Sangraha Tyagana Binu Pahichane. He said, the reason I am giving these pairs of opposites is to tell us what we should take and what we should leave. Sangraha Tyaga. What I should keep, what I should give up. I will not know unless I know what are these pairs. Good things I should keep and bad things I should let go of. Like that swan bird. Now this is one level of sadhana at the level of Ahankara. As this jiva, that will become sadhana. But here Ramana Maharshi is asking, for whom are those pairs of dualities? If you say Papa Punya, for whom is Papa, for whom is Punya? Is it for Atma or is it for Ahankara? This is first come to Ahankara. Papa Punya is for Ahankara. That Ahankara is an appearance in Atma, Sat. That Sat I am. Now that is the flight from sadhana to siddhanta. And both are important. But over here, what is being pointed out is the siddhanta part. Na pashyatam satchalanam kadapi. One last thing to note here is this dvandva. We can do this thinking only when dvandvas are calm. if somebody is in lot of sorrow, at that time to think for whom is this sorrow is very difficult. But more we have trained the mind in this way, when those situations come, we'll be able to handle it better. One thing about Saddarshanam is, sometimes you feel it's too easy, but at the same time you feel it's very difficult. See, how many verses we have studied? 11 verses. What is it that Ramana Maharshi is saying? Come to Ahankara, shift attention to Sat. Is that all? Something more should be there. So Bhagavan would narrate one story of Chintamani. He said there was one sadhaka who started doing tapasya. He did tapasya for a few months, and suddenly on his lap he found one Chintamani. Chintamani means wish-fulfilling stone. He looked at it and he said, I just started few months ago. This must not be Chintamani. He must be sitting on the banks of Gangaji, threw it in Gangaji. And again started doing sadhana for several years. Then one passerby comes and he takes a fake stone and keeps it next to him and goes away. Keeps it on his lap probably and goes away. This person looks, he says, Areva, Chintamani has come. I did sadhana for so many years. But then he tries to fulfill his wish, nothing is working. Bhagavan says that is our story. When we are told that this Ahankara is what we have to negate, this sadhaka feels it can't be this simple. I have to do some more things before I can come to abide in Sat. Right now, this is too simplistic. But then we do everything without negating Ahankara. Then he says we end up with that fake gem. But more we can reflect upon what he is telling us. More we can pay attention to this Ahankara, more we will benefit. Now Bhagavan is taking one example of Dvandva. He takes one pair of opposite and he is showing us how to enquire using that pair of opposite. Actually, from this verse onwards until 21st verse, he is also highlighting what is the nature of self-knowledge. What is the knowledge that we are familiar with, which is knowledge of the world, and what is self-knowledge. Vidya katham bhati na cheda vidya. Vidya katham bhati na cheda vidya. Vidyam vina kim pravibhatya vidya. Vidyam vina kim pravibhatya vidya. Dvayam chakasyeti vicharya moolam. Moolam is there or moola? Dvayam chakasyeti vicharya moola. Swarupanishta paramartha vidya. Swarupanishta paramartha vidya. Vidya katham bhati na cheda vidya. Vidyam vina kim pravibhatya vidya. Dvayam chakasyeti vicharya moola. Swarupanishta paramartha vidya. Vidya nachet. If there is no, or avidya nachet, vidya katham bhati. If there is no ignorance, how will you know knowledge? The first line is Vidya katham bhati nachet avidya. Right? The last quarter, look at it first. Avidya nachet, if there is no ignorance. Vidya katham bhati, how will you know that there is knowledge? Means to establish knowledge, first you need ignorance. It is pointing out that all pairs of opposites are mutually dependent. All pairs of opposites are mutually dependent. And whenever you have a mutually dependent thing, neither of them is absolute. Whenever you have a mutually dependent thing, neither of them is absolute. Father gets the title of father only from standpoint of son. Son is called son from standpoint of father. When both are mutually dependent, his truth is something different from both. Like that he says, if there is vidya, vidya is there only when there is avidya first. Avidya nachet, if ignorance is not there, do you even know what is knowledge? Vidya vina, if knowledge is not there, avidya kim pravibhati? Vidyam vina, avidya kim pravibhati? Avidya pravibhati kim? You can ask like that also. Without knowledge, can we know ignorance? Can ignorance exist without knowledge? Can knowledge exist without ignorance? Bhagavan, what do you want to say? So I want to say the third line. Doyam cha kasya iti. Enquire, to whom does knowledge belong to? To whom does ignorance belong to? What is the answer we'll get? First, Ahankara. Knowledge belongs to Ahankara. Ignorance belongs to Ahankara. Then inquire into the mula of this Ahankara. Dvayam cha kasya iti vicharya mula. When you inquire into nature of Ahankara, that abidance in Sat, which is the substratum of Ahankara, abidance in that alone is greatest Vidya. Swarupa Nishtha Paramartha Vidya. Nishtha in Swarupa, which is Sat, that alone is Paramartha Vidya. Once when Bhagwan, he was having, he never had sabha. He just sat, people came and sat around him. One group of sadhus came and they were discussing some very philosophical thing with Bhagwan. There was another sadhu, very simple sadhu, pure at heart. He said, Bhagwan, so many people come to you, so many wise people, so learned people, and they discuss so many things with you. You also answer their questions. They understand probably and go away. But I don't have any of that understanding. I don't have any of that knowledge and the depth that these people have. Bhagwan's answer was, yours is unlearned ignorance, theirs is learned ignorance. One is unlearned ignorance, another is learned ignorance. But the point here is, the one who says, I don't know, he says, you are knowing that you don't know. Means you are having the knowledge of that ignorance also. The one who is illumining ignorance, that is Atma. Whenever I say I know, the one who is illumining that thought, I know, that is Atma. And between them, between I know and I don't know, he says there is mutual dependence. Let them be there wherever they are. Don't get caught up in I know. Don't get caught up in I don't know. The one who is illumining both these thoughts, that is Chaitanya. In Bhagavad Gita, Bhagavan says, Mattaha smritihi jnanam apohanam cha. If you say, oh, I remember a lot of things, I'm able to recollect a lot of things. Any Bhagavad Gita shloka, I can remember. This is Mattaha smritihi. That remembrance is because of me. Somebody says, I understood Bhagavad Gita. Jnanam is because of me. Somebody says, I forgot what was taught in Bhagavad Gita. He says, that is also because of me. Mattaha smritihi jnanam apohanam cha. That is another version of this verse. Vidya and avidya, both are for Ahankara. Atma was never enlightened, nor Atma was ignorant. Atma is that self which just illumines knowledge and also ignorance. So without getting caught up in that dvandva, first ask this question, who is ignorant? Who is gaining knowledge? Dvandva purpose is only that. That pair of opposite which could have kept us busy, Bhagavan Ramana Maharishi is saying, use that pair of opposite to ask this question, who is going through it? And having come to Ahankara, negate that Ahankara. Bhagavan gives another story where he says, having come to Ahankara, right, once we have understood this is how we should be thinking, he says, don't be inadvertent. Don't be inadvertent in this inquiry, nor consider this inquiry as simplistic. That is one thing about any practice. If we don't have reverence for that practice will never work for us. And at no point should we speak low about any practice. Even if it is this inquiry, if we don't agree with it, we can do something else. But we should never say, oh, this is just asking about who am I? It has lot of depth, and more we can do it sincerely, that practice will reward us. So Ramana Maharishi Ji, he says, this Ahankara, once you've understood that this is what I have to work with, don't leave it halfway. Take it all the way to the end and negate this Ahankara, come to abide in the self. And the story he quotes is of a king who had a lot of vairagya. But he did different sadhanas. When he was a king, he had vairagya. But he somehow feels, right now I'm not there yet. Right now I'm not there yet. His wife's name is Chudala. She was a wise person. After many years of sadhana, many years of vairagya, he gives up his kingdom, goes to the forest, and there he starts doing his tapasya again. Then Chudala goes there and gives him Brahma Vidya, and that is where he gains moksha. Chudala tells him the story of an elephant. There was one elephant which one hunter was trying to hunt it down. Now this hunter climbs up on a tree and he says, when this elephant comes, I will jump on that elephant and then finish it. Now that hunter misses the aim. Instead of falling on the elephant, he falls in front of the elephant. Now that elephant had a chance to throw him away, make him such that he doesn't come back. But elephant is overpowered by compassion. It says, let him be. I should not do anything. It goes away. That same hunter builds a trap little later, and this elephant comes and gets trapped. So Raman Maharshi said, Chudala told Shikidhwaja that this is how our Ahankara is. Whenever we have understood that Ahankara is what I have to negate, don't be very compassionate and let go of it. That same Ahankara will come and trap us into samsara. Same Ahankara will come and bring bondage. So whenever mind is ready for this inquiry, he says, do the inquiry to the fullest. Sometimes we have this question, right? Sometimes my mind is able to be in this truth. It understands. But many times it falls back, goes into different directions. Bhagavan in one place he writes, these are because of 3 gunas. What we are really saying is sometimes mind is in sattva, sometimes it is in rajas, sometimes it is in tamas. He says, don't be too afraid of tamoguna. If mind gets into inertia sometime, everything in this world is impermanent, tamoguna is also impermanent. But whenever mind comes in sattva, he says, hold on to it fast. Don't let go of that opportunity and get the most out of sattva guna. To negate ahankara, the main guna we need is sattva. Okay, so that is this Swarupa Nishtha Paramartha Vidya. Next verse, he will take example of Triputi, triad. This verse he took example of pair of opposite. Next verse he'll take example of triad. Okay, that we will see in the next session. There was one question last time. I had mentioned that Ahankara is not Jiva Srishti, it is part of Ishvara Srishti because of avidya. How do we understand it? Why isn't Ahankara part of Jiva Srishti? One way to look at it is, Ahankara is like reflection. If sun is there and you take bucket of water outside, whether you like it or not, reflection will happen. In the same way, if we have Antahkarana, if the medium is available, reflection of consciousness in that medium will happen. So I have not created Ahankara. Ahankara is gifted to me. It comes with samsara. So that is why it is part of Ishvara Srishti. The technical way to look at it is, look at Srishti Prakriya. In Tattva Bodha also, when they said, how did creation come about? How did we look at it? From consciousness, along with avidya or maya upadhi, came the 5 elements. Space, air, fire, water, earth. Then from the sattvic aspect of 5 elements, when they combined together, what was formed? Antahkarana. Antahkarana. And in Antahkarana you have Mana, Buddhi, Chitta, Ahankara. So that process of Srishti Prakriya, it is not Jiva creating it. It is Ishvara Srishti. Now identifying with that Ahankara, this Ahankara has lot of attachments, hatred, likes and dislikes. All of that is not Bhagavan Srishti, that is Jiva Srishti. Okay, Ishvara Srishti actually is non-bothering. It is an aid for Upasana. It is an support. It is a support for meditation on the Lord. That's why there is something called as Ahangrahopasana also. Ahangrahopasana means what? Just like we have idol as an support for worship, we can have Ahankara as the support for worship. if it was Jiva Srishti, it would never be used for Alambanam. We never say take Ragadvesha as the support and shift attention to consciousness using that. Although you can, technically speaking. But whatever is Jiva Srishti, that is not used for Upasana. Ishvara Srishti, anything you can take for Upasana. Even a stone can be taken for Upasana. Tree can be taken for Upasana. Okay? Good. I would encourage those who can come in person to come in person. It's very nice to see all of you in person. At least one class in a week, we should try to come. This I've been saying from last 3 years. At least one class, we should try to come in person. If weekdays don't work, weekends. Weekend doesn't work, weekdays. Both work, very good. More the better. Om Purnamada Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnameva Vashishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Harihi Om Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. Harihi Om. Hari Om.